I was scrolling through TikTok recently, which I need to do less of, and I was seeing a lot of videos where people were complaining about Astarion being too much of the center in the BG3 fandom. I completely understand. I'm not trying to refute it, because it is true. It's ironic though, since Shadowheart is the most romanced in the game. As a result though, I ended up wanting to talk about Astarion, which is ironic, but I'm going to make up for it by introducing a very underrated character in the RPG scene and a very underrated game. Is this game underrated though? I think it's underrated. I mean, the sales difference is crazy, and also under 600 fanfics is criminal. It makes me very sad. But if you've played Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, I feel like you'll know who I want to introduce, and I want to talk about Daeran Arendae. I just want to talk a little about why I love these two characters and highlight their differences and similarities, and maybe even get more people to play Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, because it is very good and one of my favorite games.
Greetings, valiant stranger who has just burst into my life. I am the master of this house, Count Daeran Kale, myriad mellifluous monikers Arendae. No need to introduce yourself. I find remembering insignificant details, such as the name of passing acquaintances, such a bore.
As I said before, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous was one of my favorite games from 2021. I truly believe if this game made it to the mainstream, that Daeran would be a fan favorite. Even in the fandom, he is a fan favorite, which I am referencing using fanfiction. Your player character in this game is called the Knight Commander, just in case I mention that title in the future. Daeran Arendae is an Oracle Azimar with Azada blood, which is hilarious. He is one of the best healers and buffers in the game, but he is also a giant asshole, which I think is a dynamic we need more of. He lives his lifestyle to the fullest without a care for others, and he mostly just acts like another rich jerk. And we do find out he comes from a very influential family. But we learn early on that the Arendae family was all killed, but the circumstances are foggy until we go to Daeran's birthday party, which is one of my favorite side quests. We're able to piece together that Daeran opened up a portal during his 10th birthday party, releasing this being called the Other into the world, and as a result, killing his whole entire family. The Other is not explained clearly, but we know that it's bad. The entity consistently watches Daeran and threatens him while using him as a gateway into the world to do a lot of bad things. Throughout the course of the game, before you find out this secret, you find decapitated heads in your inventory, which is from the Other putting them in there to mess with you. He derives his happiness from excess and wants to live his life to the fullest, due to the fact he feels like he could die at any moment. He's selfish and full of sass, and at the end of the day, Daeran values freedom above all else, but he feels like it isn't true freedom because of the fact he's being watched 24/7. He is very entertaining to be around and has the capability to be very sweet, especially when he interacts with Ember and Woljif. He turns into this older brother figure that is not a good example, but still very sweet.
They talk about love, but they are really talking about a terrible disaster, like an earthquake, or a hurricane, or a shipwreck.
Perhaps there is another kind of love. But in my experience of love, if it doesn't feel like you've been through a shipwreck, then it's not worthy of the name.
And like Astarion, You get to see this man open up to you more and overall just be very charming. In terms of romance, I adored his romance route, and the not a date scene is so iconic. The romance is a mix of him mostly messing around at first, but he starts to grow and have genuine feelings for the Knight Commander. There's this aspect of them wanting to get closer to the commander, but also not wanting to get close because they think they'll be a threat, and it's just so endearing. And I have to put a quote from his ending slide that I absolutely love. That love came to be an integral part of his being. If the Count was a ship, that love was the ocean upon which he sailed, liberating, life-giving, essential. Despite him being an evil character, he can become a vital part of your party. Even though he talks about the crusade in a very bad light, he is very loyal, mostly because he's having a good time, but also because he grows to respect and maybe even love the Knight Commander.
Anyway, enough pillow talk. Let's go before the tieflings drag us into another mess.
Astarion, on the other hand, might have lived a life of excess when he was younger, but that immediately changes once he gets jumped by the Gur and turned into a vampire spawn by Cazador. He lives through 200 years of torture, having to seduce people to survive, but even then barely surviving because Cazador only lets him eat rats. And he also gets locked in a coffin for a year. Unlike Daeren, he doesn't even get the illusion of being free. Once Astarion is free, he starts to partake in his own form of excess. He is free to drink blood from whoever he wants, mostly larger animals, or maybe even the enemies they fight depending on who your Tav is. He can walk in the sun, which is a luxury for vampire spawn for obvious reasons. Though he might not be having birthday parties like Daeren, he can at least party with the tieflings or goblins depending on what you guys do. Astarion treasures this newfound freedom and he wants it to last. This leads into the fact that Astarion is also very selfish and is also an asshole. There are multiple instances where Astarion will flat out say, why should he help other people when he has never been helped himself?
No one ever looked out for me. No one ever said a kind thing to me.
If your Tav is romanced, he will even say that they are the only kind person he's ever met before. But you see him start to open up more after putting on a performance for most of Act 1 and partially for Act 2. You see that Astarion truly wants to be valued for something other than sex, and that the trauma Cazador has left him caused not only physical scars, but very obvious mental ones. He wants the power that ascending to a higher vampire will give to him because it means that he will never come to harm again. At the end of the day, both of these characters are very selfish people that don't really care about things that don't affect them. And it's not bad to like characters like that. It's not even bad to like characters that are more evil. Gortash has his own fandom on TikTok. I've seen all the edits. Or even Orin enjoyers. I also love Orin. I think she's a fantastic character. Liking characters that are evil is not a sign of bad moral character. Since it is fiction, we are able to analyze why these characters become evil in the first place. I don't think we necessarily have to create all these justifications for liking bad characters just because they do really bad things. Overall, both characters can end up growing into better versions of what they were at the start. Arguably, to me, I think the growth is shown better in Baldur's Gate 3 than it is in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, mostly because of the way the character arcs are laid out in terms of writing. Canonically, Daeren never becomes good in terms of alignment. He will either stay neutral evil or become chaotic evil, depending on your decisions. And you can argue whether or not Astarion becomes good at the end of the game, depending on what you do. I think there's potential for Astarion to become better, but even if he does become a spawn, I don't necessarily think he's become this good person, but there is the potential. I don't think he'll ever be a nice dude to people he doesn't care about, but I think he'll be better to the people he does give a shit about. All those character changes aside, depending on the choices that you make, they are both greeted with a new sense of freedom. that they did not have for a long time. And they have to come to terms with the fact that they need to learn how to live again. Unless you ascended Astarion, then that man is just in another cycle. He did not grow, he just became worse. He became a worse version of himself. No hate, like I said before, if you are a fan of the Ascended Astarion ending, I find all the bad endings rather fascinating. But there is a clear cut between what is considered the good ending versus the bad ending. I think the writers had very clear intentions with the character arcs in Baldur's Gate 3, because I have seen some of you acting crazy with your theories. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and this was something different, but it's something I've been wanting to try. I've only made like 3 other videos so far, so I think I'm allowed to experiment a little. It's not like anyone's watching me anyway. Anyway, bye. Oh, wow. That didn't work. How do people do that? Is it literally like a cut? Weird. Okay, bye.